In today's episode, I speak with Vanessa and she shares some very intimate, vulnerable experiences. There is a heavy warning that the content will be triggering and uncomfortable for many. I ask you, the listener, to be attuned to your inner terrain. And if some of the information becomes too overwhelming, take a pause. If there's been triggers that have been activated, the strongest thing you can do for yourself is ask for help. The more that we can listen to stories, the more that we can share, is where healing will begin. Welcome to the Lift Oneself podcast, Vanessa. I'm thankful you're here with me.
Happy to be here.
How is your heart doing?
I feel okay today. I don't feel okay every day, but today's I feel good, I guess.
What can you thank COVID for?
I thank COVID for making me spend more time at home. I was always running around a lot, trying to distract myself. I had my kids in way too many activities. They were starting to hate it. So it made us stay home more, cook at home more because I was eating out a lot. Honestly, the older I get, the more antisocial I've become. So it was kind of nice to have a reason to stay away from people or to tell people to stay away from me. So, oh no, I can't come over COVID. So yeah, I guess I'm thankful for that. It's just kind of grounded me, forced me to just stay in one place because that was very hard. So yeah, it's forced me to stay still because being still was very hard. I just want to go so I don't have to think about stuff and I don't have to deal with stuff. I could just keep going and every now and then it's like I crash and burn and I just have to sleep all day. I do a lot of grief groups and for my daughter who passed away, and I hated going to them. They were on the property of CHIO of the Children's Hospital. I hated having to drive to that parking lot. It gave me anxiety every time. So now I do them online and I enjoy them so much better. I know some people don't. Some people like to get out of the house and actually go and be in a different environment, but I love not having to get dressed. I just throw a sweater on over my pajamas and, I'm in the comfort of my bed. Because yeah, leaving the house a lot of times was just giving me anxiety, just the thought alone of leaving the house, of having to deal with outside, whether it's me living in Quebec and having to deal with the racist, rude French people, or driving and having to deal with people who can't drive in the road rage. Just all that was giving me such bad anxieties. And I started to hate leaving the house, but I would always leave the house to keep busy.
Today, we're going to speak about pregnancies and the miscarriages, stillborns, or loss. And these are experiences that you have had, even also grieving the loss of your adult child. Today, we're going to speak up to all the women that are going through, may have gone through, or possibly will go through the experience of pregnancy or trying to get pregnant. Could you share your experiences of what you've gone through with the loss of your pregnancies?
I'll start with my first loss, which was in the year 2000. I was pregnant with twins. Around, I think it was maybe 28 weeks, they told me that one of my twins had passed away. So I had to carry that baby till term because they were scared if they tried to remove him that it would harm my other baby, my daughter. I gave birth to her. Then I gave birth to the twin, and they they just put him in a metal bowl and left it in the corner of the room like it wasn't a big deal. I didn't have anyone come talk to me. I was also by myself. Her father was incarcerated at the time. My sister was at home watching Kiana. This was my second daughter. I had a friend with me, but my friend had just given birth to her baby. They wouldn't let her stay in the room because she had a newborn baby with her. So I was by myself, holding Charisse, my second daughter, and I was shaking, and I just kept staring at that bowl. And then finally, when my friend came in the room, I was like, please ask them to move that. Like it was just so, they just disregarded my baby like it was nothing. I didn't want to see it like him. It was a boy. So, I'm having my second child at 19. I was so excited to be having two. I had two of everything. I remember taking all my boy stuff and going to the maternity home that I lived at with my first daughter and just asking them who's having a boy, who doesn't have anything. And I just gave it to them. Yeah, it was hard. Like, it was hard for me to be around people with twins for a long time. I'd have a lot of nightmares. I'd have nightmares about like having two eggs on the sink next to the faucet and then one of them falling and breaking open. I would just, I just would have, and I went through, I definitely went through postpartum depression. I didn't realize then what it was, but now that I could look back, I know, like, I started like partying a lot. My second daughter was the one who I breastfed for the least amount of time. I think it was only 3 months. Then I started pumping all the time because I was always going clubbing. And then I started drinking. So then I would like started just formula feeding her instead. And yeah, I was just trying to not think about it and not acknowledge it, because that's how they treated me at the hospital. They really made me feel like garbage. And then, it's like nobody acknowledged what I went through. It was just like, well, you have a baby, so you're good. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to anything. And it was only years later, maybe like probably 10 years later, that I was speaking with this woman. I don't even remember where she was from or if she was a dietitian or something. I forget. But she was like, I just happened to mention it. And she was like, you have 3 kids. Don't say you have 2 kids. You have 3 kids, because you have to acknowledge that baby existed. And it was the first time that anyone said that to me. Nobody, like, people just were expecting me to forget and to just move on. And then it's like, I feel almost the same with losing my adult child. Even though I had 18 years with her, some people will still refer to my second daughter as my oldest. I correct them every time. She's not my oldest, she's my second. And, they just sort of avoid the topic of Kiana as if she didn't exist. And I make sure that people don't do that, because she did exist. Just as much as my stillborn baby existed, my 18-year-old daughter existed too. So I just feel people are uncomfortable with it, and they think that avoiding it is a favor to me, but it's really not. I feel like acknowledging the children I had is huge. It's like they mattered, they existed, they mattered, they were here. It's not something like I made up in my head. Yeah, that was hard, and I didn't have the tools to even know how to go about dealing with that. I was so young. I was raising 2 kids by myself. The baby father was incarcerated. I actually left him after that. So the next one was my stepdaughter's dad dove headfirst into this like really intense, serious relationship. So we started to really clash because of, my daughter was having issues and he wasn't supportive at all. So then when I became pregnant, he acted like it was the worst thing in the world. I don't talk about this often because he's passed away now. It's been 13 years. I don't like to speak badly about those who aren't with us, but it's not me speaking badly. It was my reality. This is what I experienced from this man. So I got pregnant and he moved out. He was like, I should never have any more kids. My daughter's crazy. I'm a horrible mother. But he moved out and left his daughter with me. He kept telling me he'll come back if I have an abortion. And I'm like, I'm not going unless you come with me. I go in the room. They give me some pill to like soften my cervix. I come out, he's gone. He left. This was right before Christmas. So on Christmas Eve, I end up miscarrying and I'm by myself with the kids at home. I call him. He doesn't answer. I call his sister and tell her what's happening. And he says she's probably lying and just wants attention. And I didn't tell anyone I was pregnant. I was trying to hide it just because he was making me feel so just like I should never have any more kids because of Kiana's behavior. He was acting like it was my fault that she was behaving like that. It was something I did. And I already felt like that because I'm young. I don't know why my kid is acting up. I'm, and a lot of times you have these meetings with people and they're like, oh, well, you're young, you're doing this and that. And it's sort of not directly telling you it's your fault, but telling you it's your fault. I already internalized a lot of that. So when he's there telling me, you shouldn't have any more kids, look how your kid is acting, you did this and this and this. And he just really, I'll never forget the way he made me feel. So now fast forward to now, and his daughter is 21. She lives with me. She's been living with me for a while. She came and told me that she was pregnant, and the boy told her he wants nothing to do with it. And this is the first time that I told her, your dad did that to me. And I never want you to feel the way he made me feel. You do what you want to do. If you don't want to keep that baby, then you don't. If you want to, then you do. But whatever decision you make has to be your decision. Do not make a decision to appease anyone else at all. It's and she's keeping the baby. She's due in October and it's a boy. And now I'm happy with that. And she's kind of made up with the boy and now he's being actively involved. I would never, like, as soon as she told me that, it all came flooding back. And I'm like, I would never want any of my girls to be made to feel that way by anyone at all. And I hate that, like, as a young woman, the love in your life has so much power over you and could have you like questioning yourself. You have these boys come in your life and they just shower you with all this love. And then all of a sudden, when they no longer have use for you, you're questioning yourself. Like, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? What's my faults? And it's not even about you. Like, that wasn't about me at all. That wasn't about me at all. If I could go back, I would have never went to that appointment. I would have never taken whatever they gave me that caused me later to have a miscarriage. I felt horrible. And I told myself that I would never, ever, ever be put in that situation again. And I haven't since that time. So my next loss after that, I was in a very healthy relationship. I was happy. Things were going well. I was still having a lot of issues with Kiana. But I had somebody who was very supportive and actively helping me for the first time. We were having a child together. We were super happy. It was like one of my few pregnancies that I wasn't sick. I was like glowing, I was so excited. And my daughter was having some kind of crisis. Kiana, I don't remember what it was about. She was about 10 or 11 at the time. And she, when I was like trying to close the drawer from her trying to get a knife, she started like kicking me. She ended up kicking me in the stomach twice. I was about 4 months pregnant. She was trying to jump out the window. We lived on the 4th floor. I had to call an ambulance. So they took her to the hospital. She stayed there for like 2.5 weeks. I started bleeding. So I went to the hospital, had my ultrasound. They didn't say anything, like usually the technicians aren't allowed to give you results, but I knew something was wrong because I didn't at any point see the heartbeat. So then they came and told me, your baby passed away and you're probably going to have a D&C. So I was just distraught because like I was actually in a healthy relationship. I was with someone who was very supportive and and this is something else I barely ever talk about because I never want to blame my daughter for that. I didn't tell them that I was pregnant. I was going to wait until I was further along. So she didn't know. And I never told her, about the loss because I didn't ever want her to feel like it was her fault. The hospital gave me like pills to sort of have a miscarriage. And I remember taking them and then starting to hemorrhage like really badly. So I the hospital she was at it's in Gatineau. It's like the Gatineau hospital. So there's a children's floor, but it's an adult hospital because Gatineau doesn't have a children's hospital. So I went to that hospital and I went to see her, and then I was in the emergency room. I was in the emergency room for almost 24 hours. I couldn't even hold my head up anymore. Like my blood pressure was so low. My boyfriend at the time had to drive me over to Ottawa. I had to, I think I ended up having a blood transfusion. I remember that they pulled the sack out and I could see the little baby in it. And I just remember like feeling like something dripping on my head. And I looked up and my boyfriend was crying, and I've never seen him cry. It was just, and I ended up being there for 3 days. And then after that, it's like she came home, I had to, even though this man I was with was very supportive, he didn't fully understand what that was like for me. Like so many emotions, like my daughter, I can't get her behavior under control. She attacked me while I was pregnant. It's like I'm upset that I lost my pregnancy, but I don't want to be mad at her. And it was, I was in a good place, and it's like, it's been 3 days. You need to get out of bed now. We need to whatever. And I was getting so angry at him that it caused us to break up. I couldn't do it. I was just like, you're being insensitive. You don't care, whatever. Like I said, we're still very good friends to this day. But at that time I couldn't deal with, he didn't understand, and I couldn't deal with that. I don't expect him to understand. I think like it's something you physically have to go through. I think it's hard sometimes for men to understand what kind of like deep loss that is. It's like you have this human being growing inside you and you feel so good and you're glowing and everything's going right. And then all of a sudden it's like, gone, and you're just supposed to move on with life like as if that never happened. It was really tough to deal with. After I had my DNC, the surgery to remove whatever remains were left in there, they put me in a recovery room with people who just had babies. And, I'm hearing the little suckling and the little baby noises, and it was absolute torture. It was just torture. They warned me before. They're like, oh, well, the last time I had a loss, they had changed that, and they have a special place you go, and they don't put you. The last loss I had, I went to Riverside Hospital in like a clinic. So there wasn't, but I know some hospitals in Ottawa are still doing that. And it's, I feel like it's awful, especially that the infertility rates are going up so much all the time, and more women are experiencing loss than not. Have it set up where there's a special place. You don't have to be around other people with their living babies and their happiness while you're sitting there with your dark rain cloud over you and just completely miserable. It's like, it's just such torture. It is.
I ask you, the listener, to do a check-in and see if any triggers have been activated. The strongest thing you can do is ask for help. You don't have to do it alone.
I had 2 more miscarriages after that. The next one was while I was incarcerated. Going through the loss and the miscarriages is already hard enough, but to go through that while being detained in the correctional system was that was just like next level. I started bleeding. They initially took me to the hospital. Then they said that my baby had passed away. They're like, oh, you're probably gonna pass the baby, whatever. Just, they took me back to the jail. I passed my baby in my cell with strangers who I didn't know. When you're inside in Ontario, you don't get to wear your own clothes. So they give you these jogging suits that everybody else wears. So they're often like really dirty looking stains and holes in them. And they give you underwear, like new underwear, but it's like they give you 3 pairs, and you're responsible to wash them yourself in the sink. When I say the sink, it's like this little, metal thing attached to the metal toilet with a little push thing, and like little drip drops of water come out. When I miscarried in my cell. And sorry that this is graphic and probably triggering. They were like, we're not giving you new underwear. We already gave you some. Wash them in the sink. They were like drenched. So how am I supposed to wash that in this metal sink and then I had blood all over my sheets. They were like, we already gave you new sheets. And I had to sleep on those sheets for like 3 days. I passed my baby in the toilet and with 2 women in my cell who I just met, and it was horrible. After that, like I went into such a deep depression that I stopped eating. I was just, fainting everywhere all the time from my iron being so low, probably my blood pressure being so low. I kept bleeding and I kept asking if I could go back to the hospital. They wouldn't take me. I asked the doctor there at one point, I'm like, have you ever lived in a third world country? He's like, no. I'm like, well, neither have I. Like I was born in Canada and we're supposed to have the best healthcare system. And I'm here being treated like I'm in a third world country, like washing my underwear in this little drip drops of water, not being able to see a doctor, not getting any medical care. I was scared that I would never be able to have kids again because I didn't know what was going on with my body. It was horrible. And they were acting like, I'm incarcerated, so maybe I don't deserve to have any more kids. And that, that's how they had me feeling. And I remember there was girls smoking in my cell. I forget if they're smoking cigarettes or weed. I don't know. But I just like rolled over and just ignored them. And one of the guards who was pregnant herself, she was maybe 7 months. She was doing her rounds back and forth and she started banging on the door. She's like, who's smoking? Whatever. I didn't even get up. Then she's like, you on the floor, get up, So I'm like, what? She's like, oh, I'm pregnant and you're smoking. I'm like, first of all, I don't smoke. You put me in the cell with whoever. I don't get to choose who my roommates are. And second of all, do I care that you're pregnant? You didn't care that I was, because this is the same guard who refused to give me new sheets and underwear. She told me, we already issued you some. And she was pregnant herself. So I'm like, you didn't care about my pregnancy. So why would I care about yours? Maybe if I did, I would say, hey, this guard's working. Maybe you guys shouldn't smoke in the cell. Wait till she finishes her shift. But no, I don't. I'm treating you with the same energy that you guys have treated me. I ended up filing a lawsuit against that jail when I got out because of the treatment. Like even after the miscarriage, I remember we had this really bad search where they lined everybody up, made them all strip down, throw their bras and underwears in a pile in the middle of the floor. And they were telling me to take my underwear off and squat and cough. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like I just had a miscarriage. I'm wearing a pad. I'm not going into the yard with no underwear on and just bleeding down my leg like a dog. Like that's not happening. And if you want that to happen, then I'm calling my lawyer right now. Like I just had to outright refuse. I'm like, I'm not doing that. And then they were like, oh, just be lucky we let you keep your underwear. Imagine that. I should be so honored that I'm allowed to keep my underwear and not have to squat and cough after what I just went through. Like that's a whole other topic. The correctional system, I'm not going to go too much into that. So I've had 6 miscarriages in total. I had one right before my 9-year-old. I went for a DNC. Then I still was like a month later, I was still really sick. I went to emergency room and got an ultrasound because I'm like, what? Because I did a test and it was still coming up that I was pregnant. They were like, oh, for some reason, the DNC didn't work. It's like happens to 1% of the population. So then they gave me those pills again, which I had taken the first miscarriage I had, or the second, I started hemorrhaging again. Like at first, it's like I was just bleeding normally and I'm like, okay, everything's going well, whatever. I was throwing a surprise baby shower for someone. We all got in the car and drove to Montreal to this apartment where we were hosting the baby shower. And when I got there, I was wearing jeans and they were just soaked and I didn't want to ruin her baby shower. So I changed. I just kept going and checking it. And I just sort of toughed out the night and then went into the emergency room the next morning. And by the time I got there, they were like, we don't even know how you're standing upright because my blood pressure was so low. When I look back at those pictures, I was so pale. Like I just looked like a ghost, and I can't even believe that I just feel like I didn't want to ruin her. It was like her day. And I also probably just didn't want to even acknowledge the loss anymore. Like I just wanted to put it out of my head and keep going. And yeah, so I still sometimes can't even believe that I did that. I had my 9-year-old daughter. She's 9 now. And then when she was around 8 months old, was pregnant again. Again, I went for my routine ultrasound. They're like, looks like your baby died like 2 weeks ago. We don't know why you didn't have a miscarriage. I had to make an appointment for a DNC. So I lost my oldest daughter 2 weeks before I had my youngest. It was very sudden. I was talking to my second daughter, Charisse, and I'm like, did Kiana come home yet? She's like, no. I'm like, well, she was at the movies, but it should be done by now. She should be home soon. Then all of a sudden, Charisse started calling me back. She's like, Kiana's friends just called and said that she stopped breathing. So her friends are on the phone, all frantic. And I'm like, she has serious asthma all her life. She'll probably have to be in the hospital for a bit, but she's going to be fine. This happens a lot. The whole time I was like telling myself, no, she's, this is just whatever. She has her attacks. She stays in the hospital for a few days. She comes out. We're fine. But no, I called my ex and I'm like, something's going on with Kiana. He got to the hospital within 5 minutes and called me, giving me updates. He put the doctor on the phone with me. The doctor was like, her heart stopped, but we got it beating again, but it stopped again. And we're working on her now. And then maybe like 20 minutes later, he was like, sorry, your daughter died. Like he said it like so nonchalant, like he was talking about her getting a haircut, like, sorry. So, your daughter died, but I'll never forget that. And even though I wasn't there in person, my ex was even telling me like that the guy was just very rude and cold and just not being sensitive to the situation. I don't expect people in the medical field to like sit and cry with you. And I know they have to maintain some kind of professionalism, but I feel like, especially when it's a child, like she was an adult, but she was a child and she was my child. And when you're telling parents that their child is gone, that's not the way you do it. See, they're telling me, oh, you can't touch her because we're still investigating. They sent police to my house to search her room. They interrogated all her friends. I kept telling them like she's a known asthmatic. And they treated it like it was a drug overdose and like it was something criminal. They were telling me I can't touch her. I'm like, you're not going to tell me I can't touch my child. They left her with like one eye open. There was a tube coming out of her throat and there was blood coming out of it. And I'm like, how dare you leave my child like this? Like it was a lot. It was a lot. At the end of my pregnancy, and I'm supposed to be like excited and happy that a baby's coming. And now I'm like, I don't even want a baby anymore. I want my original baby back. I was so young when I had her that it's like we grew up together, This was January and all of a sudden she was gone. I felt like I didn't even get to grieve. The doctor's telling me we're going to induce you because we feel like it's too much stress on the baby for you to still be pregnant. And they were trying to induce me the day after her funeral. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not going into the hospital. The last place I saw my daughter was in a hospital. I don't want to be sitting here hooked up to machines and I wasn't ready for that. So I went maybe, I think it was 4 days later. Kiana's funeral was on a Monday and I gave birth to my youngest daughter, Maya, on the Sunday. I think I went in on the Friday. I was there for 2 days and my labor wasn't getting started. It was just a lot. And at one point I was just like, I'm done. The labor's not getting started. I'll come back when it starts on its own. I don't want to sit here anymore. I want to go home. I don't even care. I don't even want a baby anymore. Like, I was just so distraught. I had some really good nurses who would come in and, they put a note on my door about my situation. So they would be very sensitive and, okay, we know what you're going through. We're not going to bother you too much. Just let us know if you need anything. Then I had other ones who were like, oh, so you're going to have social work involvement? Are you going to be able to take your baby home? Is the baby going to go to Children's Aid? And I would have to tell my sister, tell them to get out of the room. I don't even want to be alive right now. So I don't care if you're alive either. If you come in to me like that, I'm just going to lose it. I was already losing it.
So at one point I was left by myself. Like my sister was there with me, but then I was there for 2 days. So she had to go home and shower. I had a friend come, but then my friend left and I was by myself for maybe like 2 hours. And during that 2 hours, I was completely losing it. Like I was trying to unhook myself off the Pitocin they were giving me to induce my labor. I'm like, I'm going home. Take this machine off of me. I had enough. I don't want to be in a hospital. I don't want to hear these machines. I'm going to go home. I'm like, I'll come back when the baby comes, but I'm not staying here anymore. And then I ended up having Amaya like maybe 20 minutes after that, after I was trying to unhook myself. Like she just came out really fast. I ended up hemorrhaging. They were trying to put me in surgery. I was like, I'm not going into surgery. Like I just wanted to go home. I didn't care.
I ask you, the listener, to do a check-in and see if any triggers have been activated. The strongest thing you can do is ask for help. You don't have to do it alone.
And it was hard. It was like, I went through this with my labor with Charisse, where I had a baby and I was happy that I have my baby, but I have the twin sitting in a bowl in the corner, and that was very hard. But this was not even comparable. It was just like my world literally revolved around my oldest daughter, Kiana. She was the most special to me. You're not supposed to have a favorite kid. Not that she was my favorite, but she was the one I was worried about the most because she had so much going on all the time. When I came home with Amaya, there's a part in, they all have the same Anne Getty's baby book, just different versions of it. And there's a part in the first couple of pages that says how I felt when I brought you home. And Amaya's is still blank because what was I supposed to write? Was I supposed to lie and be like, we were so happy and everything was full of sunshine and rainbows? Or was I supposed to tell the truth? Like everybody was miserable and distraught and crying, and I didn't even want to be alive. And I certainly didn't want to have a newborn baby to take care of when I didn't feel like taking care of myself. When you go through a loss like that, it's like everybody all of a sudden is your best friend. Oh, how are you okay? What happened? Could I do something for you for like maybe 2 weeks? By the time I had Amaya, it was just crickets. Nobody was around. And I would sit there and just cry. Amaya would be crying. I would just be crying. Like I don't even barely remember the first year of her life. Like I managed to get through somehow, but I don't remember how, and sometimes I look back at pictures and I'm like, when was this picture even taken? Like, I don't even remember this day. It was like I was in such a fog. I just was going through the motions, but it was like I was sleepwalking. And I feel bad that Amaya had to be born at such a sad time. It was a lot. And you know what I'm going to say for anyone who has people around them that go through something like that, don't avoid them or just, come around for a bit, then go on with your life. Like little things, like if somebody would have just brought me a home cooked meal, or something so that I wouldn't, because I had kids I had to take care of still. So grateful that I had that 18 years because with all my other losses, I didn't even have that. So I had 18 years with her. She was just so outrageous. She was like the definition of marching to the beat of your own drum, and I got used to crying. Like I would cry with sunglasses on so that people wouldn't see I was crying. I would walk around the grocery store crying, like I was just always crying. And I was someone before who never liked crying in front of people. I didn't like when people cried in front of me. It made me feel very awkward. I would see it kind of as a weakness, like, get over it. Just stop. Like that's when I really started to be like, okay, I'm sad and that's okay. Cause that's what it is. Like something sad happened. So I'm sad. I'm tired of being strong and being like, sort of like unbreakable, where I just keep going and going and nothing can stop me. No, I'm like, this is like, I went through a lot in my life. And this was something that I had to admit to myself. It was an obstacle I couldn't get over. I still struggle, and that's going to be a lifetime struggle. There's not going to be a time that I'm not sad for losing my daughter. There's not. I'm just learning how to appreciate the happy moments, even if it's only 20 minutes of the day that was happy. I really appreciate those happy moments. The advice I would give anyone who has people around them going through this, or even going through this themselves, that just be with
people, like present in their sadness. That's it. There's no nice thing to say to make you feel better. And that doesn't exist, any sentence that starts with at least, no, it's probably going to be offensive and hurtful. Like there's no at least.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, how can a family or friends support a person that's gone through this kind of experience?
Just be present with them. Just like listen, ask them how they're doing, ask them if they want to talk, and let them talk and listen. Or sometimes just sit with them. I bring people food. You forget to eat or you just don't feel like eating. So I'm like, you're going through some stuff. You don't want to cook. You don't want to eat. But it's here. You're hungry. It's there. It's heated up. It's just little things like that. I feel like make a huge difference. Nobody wants to hear, you could try again. You're still young. At least you have other kids, or at least it was early in your pregnancy, or at least you had 18 years with her. Like no one ever wants to hear that, And I know, and I used to be like very spiritual. I was raised Catholic, then I converted to Islam. And after losing my daughter, I didn't want to hear I don't want to hear about, well, God just took his angel back because she wanted her to be so close. No, she was my angel. Maybe for some people that's how they see it, but I don't expect people to understand if they haven't been through this type of loss themselves. I wouldn't want them to fully understand, but you at least have to admit to yourself that you don't understand. I don't understand what you're going through, but I'm going to be here, like present with you. Don't say, oh, I understand. I know. You don't. People want to know, like, okay, I'm not alone. You've been through this too. But you have to know when. Sometimes it's like, no, let them be present and it's about them and not you, so you don't need to mention that whatever you went through. It's like, I'm here for you. This is your time. I'm listening and I'm just here, physically just here. I keep it real. That's how I protect my mental health. I don't make excuses. I tell people as it is. I can't do today. I can't do outside. It's one of those days I have to stay home. I have to just relax. I listen to a lot of meditations. I do my yoga, and there's days that's what I have to do, and that's what I do. And I tell myself that I don't try to push through things anymore. I don't say, oh, it's okay, I got this, I could do it. No, it's not. Or that fake it till you make it. No, I'm not faking anything. I'm keeping it real. And this is the most real I've ever been in my life. Like and then, there's times that people say stuff, and before I would just let it slide. And now I tell people, you see what you said there? That's offensive. Don't ever say it again. And if you do, I'm going to have to say goodbye and not talk to you anymore. This is how I protect my mental health, is I just keep it real with myself. I keep it real with the people around me. And I say how it is. And it took me a lot. Like, I'm in my 40s. It took me only now to be able to do that. All my life, it was like, I'm fine. I'm great. Everything's good. I could do this. And it's that for me was not normal.
I want to ask you this for some listeners that maybe in this experience or that you can relate to. You mentioned in 3 different circumstances the loss of one child, yet still having to be there with another child.
Yeah.
So you experienced it with the twins, you experienced it with Kiana and the miscarriage, and then you experienced it with Maya and Kiana. Having to be there for your child and trying to bring a type of aliveness, yet still hold and be honest with the sadness. What words would you offer to somebody so that they don't, quote unquote, fake it till you make it and try to negate one over the other? How can they bring both into the experience so that they don't drown?
You have to give yourself time to be sad. You can't just pretend that you're not sad or that what you went through wasn't a big deal. It was a big deal. You have to acknowledge your feelings and acknowledge like the loss, because like, it's like we live in a society that just pushes those things away, and it's like, just forget it, just keep going. And for me, that's not healthy. Like, you have to just take time to like I said, I have days where I just stay home and I cry all day, and that's okay. It's not every day, but I'm going to have those days. And that's like, I need that. I need those days. I need those days to just say, I can't do it. And that's okay. And I was someone who was very super independent. And I always prided myself on doing everything myself. Like, I don't need a man. I don't need family. I could do this. I got this. You need people. I feel like that whole takes a village to raise a child mentality, that needs to be normalized, because you need people. We need each other. Like, it's not even healthy to do everything by yourself. It's not healthy to have to go through things and struggle and do it on your own. You know what I mean? So it's like, even if you have to find a village with strangers who also went through the same things you did, then that's where you find your village. Because sometimes it's like the people around you don't understand. So you have to go through, strangers on Facebook, whatever, but you need that. You need that human compassion, that empathy. You need that, just to tell you you're not alone, and you're sad, but you're going through sad things. So be sad. Grieving is so personal, and everybody does it differently. That's one lesson I really learned. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. No matter what stage of loss you had, there's no right or wrong way. So you really have to, you just do whatever makes it softer for you. Not even better. I hate that word, but whatever makes it softer, because it's not going to grief doesn't get better, but it can get softer, not so harsh and not so like in your face and like taking over your whole existence. Because, when you're really in the, like, the middle of it, it's just like, it takes over everything. Like everything used to remind me of Kiana, or everything would it's like you lose a baby and all of a sudden everyone around you is pregnant, and you have to be like, oh, congratulations, but really I hate you. Why are you rubbing your shit in my face? I don't care. So it's it just takes over you. That's all you see, because it's like you're missing something, and all of a sudden it's everywhere. Everyone else has it except you. It's like you're in a coma, and everybody around you's life is going on, but you're like, and you hear it and you see it, but you're just laying there. You can't do anything, like, it's like, you just have to like take it. And that's hard. Whatever makes that softer, then that's what you do. Like I said, it's very personal, and some women want to talk about it. Some don't want to ever talk about it again. Some women need a hug. Some people don't want to be touched at all. Some people want to eat. Some people don't want to eat at all. And there's nothing right or wrong about any of that. It's just whatever makes it softer and, I guess, more manageable.
As you said, some don't want to talk about it. Would you say, though, it's important to acknowledge the pain?
Yeah. For me, I went long without talking about a lot of things. Like I said, I never used to talk about what I went through with my stepdaughter's dad. I never used to talk about, it's been so few times that I've spoken about the miscarriage I had when Kiana kicked me. I just didn't want to talk about it. I barely want to talk about my childhood. Like, I grew up in such awful conditions, and I would just lie all the time and act like, oh, it was okay. Or I just wouldn't talk about it. And a lot of people would be like, you never talk about your parents. Yeah, I don't, but now I do. And I feel it's definitely important. It's not for everybody. If you can't talk about it, write it down. Journaling's great. I feel like when I write stuff and then I go back to it a few months later, I'm like, I can't believe I even had those thoughts. Like, I don't even remember having that go through my head. So it's like, you already know that you've gotten past a certain point that you don't even remember being that down and that sad and having those deep, dark thoughts. I used to write letters too, like to my parents, and then rip them up. Like, just write letters, like saying because I don't speak to them. And even when my mom passed away, I wrote her a letter and I put it in her pocket right before she got cremated, because I didn't have a mom. I really didn't. And she never took accountability for the neglect and the abuse that we suffered at her hands. I wasn't able to have a relationship with her as an adult at all. And so when she passed away, it was a lot of mixed emotions. It was like, I always told myself when that happened, I would feel relief that she was no longer here to torture us and to put us through hell like she was when she was alive. At the same time, I was sad because I didn't have a mom. There was no chance that she was going to all of a sudden take accountability, to apologize, to try to make amends. That's not going to happen. It's over, And so that was hard. I felt better that I wrote her a letter, telling her like I needed a mom and you weren't there, and you were supposed to protect me and take care of me, and you didn't do those things. I had to learn how to do them by myself, and so much by myself that I became like super independent that I didn't even want anyone helping me. I pushed everybody away and just tried to do everything myself all the time. And that was so toxic.
I ask you, the listener, to do a check-in and see if any triggers have been activated. The strongest thing you can do is ask for help. You don't have to do it alone.
Imagine that you're 18 years old. What are 3 words you would tell yourself?
It's okay to ask for help. Yeah.
I want to acknowledge you and give you appreciation and tell you I appreciate you. And
you.
I want to tell you the reason why I see your strength and what strength means for me. The strength that I see in you is that you continuously choose to show up, and you continuously choose to have a kind heart and a gentle heart. That is strength. And to be honest and stand in your truth and supply what it is that you need, that is strength. To still acknowledge the pain that has gone through and not push yourself away, not disconnect from yourself, that is strength. So I really want to thank you for sharing such intimate details of your life that you don't allow many to enter in, and you're sharing it so publicly. As we had the discussion, I know it was in a sense to empower others that they're not alone, that you're actually using this pain as a gift to empower others so that they can show up for themselves. So I thank you, Vanessa, from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you. I truly do. I truly
Well,
do.
thank you for inviting me to be able to share this on your platform, and for everything you're doing. So
Thank you. Is there anything that you would like to share with the listeners?
take care of yourself. Don't let anybody tell you how you should be feeling or how you should respond to whatever life events you're going through, whatever loss. Like I said, there's no right or wrong way to grieve. It's very personal. You get to dictate that. They're your feelings.
That is warrior work. So you are doing warrior work, my love.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We are here doing a second recording. As Vanessa listened to the edited version, there were some things that she felt were needed to be said. And I wanted to give her that space to be able to acknowledge her truth and share it. And that was in regards to your last pregnancy that you recently had, and what that experience was and what you felt. Do you mind sharing with the listeners what that is, Vanessa?
So my last pregnancy was last summer. I was very sick. I don't remember if I mentioned earlier that I suffer from I'm going to try to pronounce it properly, hyperemesis gravidarum, I think you say it. It's like extreme nausea and vomiting in pregnancy, and it's all day, and you can't get out of bed. Everything is just makes me throw up. Everything. It was so bad that I'd be lying in bed like for days, and the smell of my hair would make me throw up. Like just sleeping on my hair, like everything was bothering me. I just kept telling myself, okay, well, I'm going to get a baby out of this, so I could endure it. It's only 9 months. I could get through it. I've been through this before. I've been hospitalized a lot of my pregnancies for dehydration. Like I suffer from this most of my pregnancies. I've had this. I knew right away when I didn't, like I've had so many ultrasounds. I know like when you don't see the heartbeat. So I already knew, because the technician isn't allowed to tell you, but you usually see it or you hear it. So when I didn't see that, I knew that that the baby was gone. And they said that my hormone levels were still so high that they think that the baby just passed away that day. It was the day before Kiana's birthday. So it's already a very hard time of year for me. And I remember I had to go get a CAT scan because they wanted to rule out appendicitis because I was also having a pain on my side. The technician was like, "Is there any chance you could be pregnant?" And I was so like, that just completely depleted me. You know, it's like you couldn't take the time to just read my file. They literally just told me your baby died, probably just died today. And they wheeled me into this room for this man to ask me if there's a possibility that I could be pregnant. And because of COVID, I had to keep the baby inside me until they were able to do a D&C, which was over a week later. So I was still vomiting every day. I was still super sick, and I was just super depressed. I was calling them every day crying, like, please just give me an appointment. This is torture. Like, at least before I was like, you know, I'm sick, but I'm getting a baby out of it. Now I'm just sick for nothing. And it's like, you can't treat people like this. Just give me an appointment. I don't understand. And then I asked them to tie my tubes, and they're not doing that because of COVID either. So, you know, I just really felt like, that one hit me the worst because I was already in such a down place, you know, after losing Kiana. And I really feel like I was robbed of my newborn baby stage with my last daughter because I was so sad. I barely remember the first year or two of her life. Like I was just sleepwalking through her life. So I really was excited to have another chance. And, you know, I didn't get that. And it's just, you know, I just felt like just defeated. I just felt like life just kicked my ass, and I had to surrender. Like, you won. I give up. You know, like I felt like I really just gave up on life at that point. You know, it's just like you just feel broken. You know, like I feel like my spirit was broken. My motivation, I just felt like my body's broken. Like I can't even keep my pregnancy for the full term. And there's something wrong. And, you know, I've done tests, and they never know what causes these things to happen. With being so sick, I tried so hard to just stay in bed. You know, I was so paranoid the whole time that something was going to go bad. So I'm like, let me just lie down as much as I can, not lift anything, not eat as well as I could with whatever I could hold down, take my vitamins every day. Like, you know, like you're on edge when you already have a history of miscarriage. You don't get to fully enjoy your pregnancy because it's always going to be like, you know, is the baby moving? You know, am I spotting? What's that pain? Like everything is like just paranoia. Like every ultrasound, you're just like clenching your fist until you hear the heartbeat, you know? So it's just devastating, and it's not spoken about enough. So people don't get it in school, like grade 5, you know, when they start teaching sex ed, and they teach you about, you know, pregnancy and about birth control and abstinence. They don't talk about what happens if you can't get pregnant or if you can't keep a pregnancy. You know, this is stuff they don't talk about, what pregnancy does to your body. They tell you how to prevent it. That's it. And then they make it seem like, okay, you have sex, you get pregnant, and you have a baby. That's how it goes. But that's not the story for a lot of people.
because I think there's this wrong narrative that the human body functions this way for everybody.
Yes.
And fertility is another thing that I think has been placed on women, that that's the only way that they can find their fulfillment. And when their body isn't able to access that, then there's a real void in women. They have a real issue with identity and a relationship with themselves and a relationship with the body. Therefore, I think the narrative also has to change, that pregnancy isn't for everybody. And we aren't opening up the dialogues that, you know what, human bodies, they function differently. If you're not able to conceive a child through your own body, it doesn't rob you from being a mother. And I think that is the discussion to come into understanding every human body develops differently. And this narrative that everybody can do the same thing and create life, it won't always look the same for everybody. And I think that's, for myself, where I would like to see these discussions go into, because that's what's lacking. And that's where people are beating themselves up, because there's a narrative that if my life doesn't measure up to this story that society is given, then there's something wrong with me. I hold you in your pain. I see you. I witness you. You have gone through a lot. You are a warrior. You're a warrior of still showing up in a world that everybody wants to be. Oh yeah, you don't have a choice. We always have a choice.
Yeah.
And, suicidal tendencies, when you have this much pain going on, people have no idea the internal struggle of it. It hurts to get up. It hurts to have this narration bombard you all the time. I want to acknowledge you in that warrior work for showing up. People don't understand unless they've experienced pain how the inner terrain can be. And people want to write off of, oh, this and that and that and this. And it's like, if you were in touch with your own inner terrain, you would have understanding for other people. Because you'll understand that, you know what? There's certain experiences you didn't have, and you really don't know what people are navigating through. This is where the space is of just listening, having a space of allowing people to reveal their pain and not be shunned away, allowed to be seen.
Thank you very much. It's not the easiest stuff to talk about. I'm just grateful that I'm able to still to share with other people, and people could not feel so alone. I feel like a lot of women suffer in silence when it comes to infertility. And yeah, I agree with you that the talk about adoption and surrogacy and all these things, like as options, as realistic options, or not wanting to have kids as a realistic option, needs to be spoken about more.
Thank you for making it all the way to the end. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this conversation may have brought up triggers, discomfort. Know that there's help out there. And the strongest thing you can do for yourself is to ask for it. You don't have to do anything alone. I appreciate you being here and sharing the space of conversation so that we can erase the stigmas surrounding mental health. Please subscribe to our podcast, and where possible, leave a review. Until next time, remember, be kind and gentle towards yourself. You matter.